Okay.
No, there we go. Here you go. Elder Millenial. Your
Now we're
stage.
good. All right,
Yeah.
cool. So, hello everybody. Thanks for joining. So, I am Elder Millennial. Um, Obviously, the pseudonym that I go by. I've been on Cardano, I would say, for about a year and a half now. And I was super involved, and still super involved in the Minswap Dex community. We'll kind of go through this, but the main topic, I've been talking with Felix and a bunch of other people in the AI space, specifically around the use of AI in various DAO kind of governance structures. So Felix asked me to kind of come and talk a little bit about how I've been using AI in the Minswap community to do catalyst selection. So yeah, let's go ahead and kick it off. So just to kind of give like a really brief introduction of like who I am. So yeah, I'm Elder Millennial. So I'm a neuroscientist by training. I'm an AI engineer by profession. And I philosophically, because I think this is kind of a bit of an important thing in the AI space, I consider myself to be a classical humanist. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I think that actually has a bit of an impact, especially as we're dealing with a lot of these, kind of philosophical discussions about how do we use AI when we go to, when we try to go and make decisions about how are we going to run things. As I already mentioned, I've been kind of a senior member of the Minswap community. So I am what's known as a kitty farmer, which is kind of a senior member of the Minswap community. I'm also a part of a couple of groups. I'm an emissions manager. So I'm part of a group of people in the Minswap community that makes decisions about how yield farming emissions are adjusted. I'm also on the Catalyst community or committee, excuse me. Yeah, the Catalyst Committee. So we try to look through all Catalyst proposals and then make a decision about which proposals do we actually want to put forward for the community to vote on. I'm also the founder of Steel Swap. So that's a DEX aggregator. I'm also a Cardano Python developer. So I create a bunch of Python libraries and I also contribute to them. And that's kind of important, especially in kind of these AI discussions, because Python is really kind of the language of AI. So being able to develop these different tools for AI to be able to interact with is pretty critical. So I try not to just develop these and use them in private. I try to push them out to the wider community so that they're able to use them. I'll talk a little bit more about that very briefly later on. Um, so yeah, let's just kind of start off with Minswap governance. So Minswap, I think one of the major selling points of Minswap is that they're really focused on community governance. So they have a bunch of different initiatives that they have. So they have a lot of these things that they call working groups. As I already mentioned before, they have like an emissions management group, and there's generally a member of the MinSwap team that's a part of these working groups. But for the most part, they follow the discussion and decisions that are created by the actual MinSwap community members. So MinSwap community members are not people who are employed by MinSwap directly. Things like making decisions on how emissions are being handed out for yield farming and stuff like that, that actually is handled by a group of community members. Protocol development. So there's a number of things in version 2 of Minswap that is going to be coming out that was like suggested or proposed by various community members, DAO governance, and then of course Catalyst selection. There's also a lot of community initiatives. So the most recent significant one is the Minswap token burn. So basically, as a part of the emissions working group, me and a few other people did a really strong analysis of the tokenomics, and we actually said, oh, wait, We actually have so many Min tokens here that we effectively have like 30 years of supply of Min tokens. So someone in the community put together a proposal with a lot of really good data analysis, and they said, well, maybe we should burn a good portion of the supply of this. So, and then of course, there's a bunch of other things that I can't remember, just because so many things are going on. And Minswap Labs is again really good at really empowering their community to take control of the DEX. So um, just kind of going back, again, the entire purpose of this talk is to talk about how AI is being used for governance. So in this particular instance, for the Minswap catalyst selection, I'm going to talk very specifically about Fund 10. So this, Fund 10 was almost a year ago now. And the basic task of this was that there's 1,500 proposals that were a part of Fund 10. And the goal was to try and find 50 different proposals for the Minswap community to vote on. And that obviously there were certain criteria that we had decided on. So obviously it has to benefit Cardano DeFi. And then we should also try to support the various partnerships that Minswap had also developed. But the problem is in terms of, obviously going through 1,500 proposals is kind of a daunting task. And we only really had a group of 7 to 10 community volunteers that had, decided that they wanted to do this. So the question is, how do you actually sort through all of this information to find the good quality proposals that are going to be beneficial to the Minswap community? So, when we first kind of started out, everyone was just kind of like, I don't want to call it cherry picking, but basically going through and finding their favorite proposals and then just kind of posting them into a chat. And that was really not working out all that well because, again, I mean, with 1,500 proposals, like, what are the chances of you missing like a good one? So what I had actually been working on at my day job was I was working on a lot of like RAG-based models. So I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what that is. But I had this idea of coming up with kind of like an unsupervised way of trying to help the members of this catalyst selection committee decide, how do we quickly filter out bad proposals and try to make sure we capture as many of the good proposals as we possibly can. And so the question is, what if we use AI to cluster proposals on similar topics together? And then what we could do is we could actually have some discussions, because even though we kind of had this set of criteria that we wanted to use to make decisions on which proposals we want to select, what if we, as a first pass, we just kind of say, okay, well, these are all of the ideas that are being presented across all of Fund 10. Which one of these things are actually in alignment with the things that we're interested in doing? So obviously there's a variety of reasons why, this type of approach would be helpful. You know, a lot of the time, or yeah, so things like, just fatigue from like having to read through all of these things with such a small group of people. There's kind of a high risk of, making mistakes. And I think, as most people know, especially in the Cardano developer community, people tend to get extremely technical about things. So sometimes you can kind of lose the significance or importance of what somebody is proposing because someone's really interested in the technology. It's sometimes they don't really sell the idea as well as they could. Yeah, so then, we by doing this, by trying to actually cluster these things and identify the ideas that are being presented in Fund 10, the basic idea is that we have more time to discuss the ideas of specific proposals or just kind of entire categories of proposals that are being presented. So I do want to give kind of a quick rundown of some kind of key terms here, just so that some of this stuff doesn't kind of get lost in translation. So, if you're a little more familiar with AI, in the next couple of slides, I'm going to be showing kind of like a rough overview of the process that I used. But for people who are less familiar with this, so there's four kind of key terms to kind of keep track of. So text embeddings. So text embeddings are basically a way of taking a chunk of text and turning it into a series of numbers. And what those series of numbers represent are, kind of abstract pieces of information about that text that allows you to draw an association with maybe other pieces of text. RAG, so I mentioned this before. RAG is retrieval augmented generation. And basically, this is the kind of chat GPT stuff that you may have seen before, where it's kind of like you have this large PDF, you dump it into chat GPT, and then you ask it to summarize the entire document for you, right? So that would be one example of retrieval augmented generation where you're actually pulling in all of this data from external sources, and then you're asking the large language model to do something like to summarize or to give you a specific answer in a really large body of text, that kind of stuff. So dimension reduction. So this is going to be important with respect to the text embeddings. So quite often the text embeddings are really large, like sequences of numbers. So they're like hundreds or thousands of numbers in length. So the idea behind dimension reduction is to reduce that down into something that's a little bit easier to graph and display. So I'll actually show an example of that. And then finally, clustering. So what clustering allows us to do is to actually take information that is closely related and actually draw like boundaries around like this group of proposals um, all are based on the same topic, just as an example. So really quickly to kind of go through the entire process. So I took the Catalyst proposals, so just the raw text of it. At that time for Fund 10, there was actually an API where I could just pull in all of that data. And then just for the sake of convenience, I actually put it into OpenAI's LLM vector generation API. So they have a bunch of large language models where you can just send them a piece of text and then they'll send you the embeddings back. I put these into a vector database. So this is kind of that first step of just generating the text embeddings. And then what I did was I took those vector embeddings. So those vector embeddings that I was getting back from OpenAI were 1,500. Yeah, they had over 1,500 dimensions, right? Which is a little bit difficult to wrap your head around. So that's where the dimension reduction comes in. I reduced it to two dimensions, and I'll show that in the next slide. So what this allows me to do is to plot all of the text embeddings on a simple graph. I ran clustering using HDB scan. So that's hierarchical database scan. And then I used ChatGPT. So for each cluster, what I did is I took just the proposal summaries and then I fed those into ChatGPT and I said, okay, give me a summary of what this group of proposals is trying to do. All right, cool. So I know I kind of rushed over that really quick. I know there's kind of a lot of steps in this process, but this was I would say in terms of like time sync, like this is a relatively simple process to do from kind of a technical standpoint. So I think I was able to do this in roughly like 4 hours or so. So it wasn't, it looks super complicated, but because of all of the tooling that's available out there, this was pretty straightforward to do. So, as I was mentioning before, so you take your text embeddings, you do dimension reduction. So we get that down to 2 dimensions, and then what that means is that we can actually take all of these proposals that we're generating these text embeddings for, and we can generate some visualizations, right? So what this is actually showing here is if you can take a look in here, you can see like each one of these little points is actually a representation of a proposal. And what is more important, so what you see on the X and Y axes are for the most part like irrelevant. The most important thing is to actually take a look at how closely together each of these points are located, right? So what this actually says, like if you take a look at this little green island of dots, that means that there's a group of proposals that are actually closely related in terms of what topic they were written on. So you can, same thing with, this group of purple dots, et cetera. So for this, in addition to just kind of showing like how this embedded feature space, the different colorings actually show how the proposals were clustered together. So that means that, even kind of looking in here, like you see this group of yellow dots, that means all of these belong to the same cluster. And what I would do is I would take all of these, like as an example, all of the proposals from something of the same color, and then send those to Chat GPT to get a summary back. So if for the people are more who are more familiar with looking at this kind of data, um, one of the things that you'll notice in here is that, if you were to remove all of the colors from this, it seems like there's a couple of really clear-cut clusters in here, but like once you start to get into the middle of this, it's kind of like, well, are those actual clusters? I mean, it doesn't look like it's really clustering all that well. So I wonder, if this is actually working well at all. So just to kind of show a couple of examples of what actually ended up coming out of this. So up at the top, I have like the group number. So this is group 26, and the reason why I selected this one is because this one actually had um, the Minswap proposals in it. So first of all, the first kind of sign that this is actually working well is that all the Minswap proposals were actually put into the exact same group. So the other good sign that this is actually working well is that not only were the Minswap proposals in here, but then you can also see other proposals from other DeFi protocols in here as well. So Sunday Swap, LenFi, etc. So that's kind of a good indication that this is working out pretty well. Um, and then we can also see here, just from the description, that this is creating a reasonably decent summary. So the common themes across the proposals include the use of Aiken programming language, etc. So what I'll talk about here in a second is that how are we actually using this once we actually generate these groups and get these clusters together. So one way that we're doing is we're saying, okay, well, we're going to give all of these proposals a pass. So I don't actually have to go through and read each one of these proposals, but I know that all of these proposals are based on, smart contracts for DeFi applications. So just to give one other example of, maybe something that was less relevant to our community, there's actually just, one cluster that was specifically focused on, Cardano in Japan, right? And, if you look through all of these, like all of these proposals are based on, education or funding. I think there was a magazine in here. Yeah, crypto magazine publication for Cardano in Japan. So obviously this is something that would be a little less relevant. And just to make sure that I'm not kind of glossing over, how well this worked, there were obviously some flaws in this process. So in this particular cluster, you can see that most of these proposals are focused around mental health and wellness. But we did have, a few of these that were based on like art, right? And, community building and stuff like that. So those definitely seem like outliers. So obviously this is not like a flawless process. The description that we're getting is not a perfect, the summarization that we're getting up here is not really a perfect summary of all of the things that are being included in here. So this is actually where kind of like the need for human review actually comes into play. Um, so one of the other things to mention is that, Fund 10, that was the first time we tried this entire process. We refined it a little bit for Fund 11. Based on some of the things that we saw in Fund 10, like there were outliers, we modified the prompt so that it gave us even better and shorter summaries. But we also asked ChatGPT to point out outliers. This ended up working out pretty well. So this was one example where this particular cluster of proposals was based around webcomics, and then it properly identifies the kind of the odd one out in here, which is a meme coin for let's see here, the meme coin for art and art communities. So yeah, Fund 11, this ended up working out better, just in being able to identify outliers. So just to really kind of go through, yeah, make a the AI component of this was really only there to kind of help one small, I'll call it small part of the process. And what we ended up doing is we created a kind of a three-phase process for doing this selection. So the first phase of this process, this actually used the clusters that were generated by our AI. So we had approximately 100 different clusters of proposals. So for each cluster, two committee members were assigned to it, and then each of them made the decision to either accept or reject the entire group of proposals. And then if there was some kind of a disagreement between those two, then a third committee member would be the tiebreaker on it. So as I had kind of pointed out before, just kind of like doing a group pass or reject was not always ideal, just because some of the proposals inside of a cluster were kind of odd ones out. So we also, we refined the process a little bit to say, okay, well, you can include exceptions as well. And exceptions had a pretty low threshold for being passed through. So any committee member could actually create an exception for it. It sounds like that could have a lot of opportunity for abuse, but realistically, the number of times that we actually had exceptions was relatively small. So after phase one, so we started out with roughly 1,500 proposals in phase one, and then over the course of a week, using this group pass and reject system, phase two, only had 300 proposals in it. So that's roughly an 80% reduction in the number of things that, that the committee members had to look over. And then we used a very similar process for each of the individual proposals, right? So two committee members would take a look at each of the remaining proposals and they would accept or reject. And, with this stuff, the idea was to not spend a whole lot of time on the proposal, just to take a look at it and make sure that it was um, it was reasonably aligned with the goals of what Minswap was looking for. So, the goal was not to try and point out obvious flaws in the proposal, just really to do kind of like spot checks to make sure that, something isn't getting through that shouldn't have gotten through. And then the last phase is the ballot voting. And then basically each member of the committee was given a certain number of votes. They could vote on up to 20 proposals, and then we just kind of rank ordered them from top to bottom. And then, down at the bottom here, I say that Minswap Labs had 3 to 5 golden votes. And basically what that was is that if they noticed that there was a proposal in there that the Minswap committee did not choose, but they wanted to make sure was included in the final like on-chain voting phase, they could pass through 3 to 5 of those. All right, cool. So I know that was a lot of information. I do have this slide and one additional slide just to go through really quickly, and then we can open it up for discussion. So even though I kind of like covered some of the details of the process of this, the first time that we did this, I think AI was a bit of a cliff note in the entire process where, as I said before, like I didn't spend a whole lot of time developing it. Once we had the clusters and people made the decisions, it was like, we had eliminated 80% of the proposals. And, a lot of the time was actually spent discussing what ideas we should be funding, which is entirely the point of what I think the AI should have been used for, right? It's really to free up the committee members from having to like wade through all 1,500 proposals. And instead, what they're like, instead of actually spending so much of their time just reading through everything, they were able to spend significantly more of their time discussing, specific ideas and specific proposals. And, you know, this is a great idea, but they're asking for 2 million ADA or something like that, So that like those are the exact kind of discussions that we were able to have. And again, it was because, we were able to use AI to really filter out so many of these proposals. So yeah, and this is the entire point. AI helps humans focus on the things that matter. But and this is kind of a critical thing because we've noticed this in the Minswap community. Humans still need to be involved, right? And I don't just mean that from like we can't fully allow AI to like automate this entire process, but trying to get people involved in the governance of DAOs can sometimes be extremely challenging. And I think that one of the things that we saw throughout this entire process is that, there's a lot of room for error, especially when AI is trying to make decisions on things, including like the addition of like certain proposals into like some kind of an AI generated topic. And at the end of all of this, I was actually kind of curious as to whether or not, all of this was actually useful, right? Because it was almost kind of like such a cliff note in the entire process that we really didn't even discuss, the initial step in the process as much as maybe we could have. But by the time Fund 11 came around, and people started wading through proposals again, then it was like, okay, well, can we do this whole AI process again? Because that really did help to cut down quite a bit of the time. And in addition to that, I mean, it wasn't just something that the Minswap community used. Liquid Labs also actually requested access for the analysis as well, and I know that they used it in their catalyst selection process too. So I think this is perfect in terms of like, it's almost an afterthought that AI was being put in there because I think that means that the emphasis is being put on the ideas and proposals themselves. So I thought that was all excellent. But the main point that one thing that I do want to say here is that everybody should make a strong effort to get involved, especially in, not just in the Minswap catalyst selection, but I know a lot of DAOs are actually starting to follow a very similar structure where they use a lot of their ADA for the community to vote on which proposals to support. And one of the things I really want to emphasize here is that, if you do have a catalyst proposal, make sure you come and engage the Minswap community because at the end of the day, um, it's the Minswap community that ends up making the final decisions on, what catalyst proposals are being selected. And then also with the on-chain votes, they're the ones that are actually make yeah, they're the ones that are actually making the final decisions on what ends up getting voted on. And then of course I have to say, buy min and vote, right? Because that's how we do the on-chain votes in the MinSwap community. All right. Just a couple of final comments and maybe some potential topics of discussion. So one of the things that when I got involved in Cardano a year and a half ago. One of the reasons why I specifically got involved in Cardano is because a lot of the very unique infrastructure that Cardano is actually bringing to the table, specifically related to AI stuff. So I very specifically want to call out NewNet and Iagon. So just because both of these protocols are developing like some actual infrastructure to be able to create like fully decentralized AI, and we need more of that. And ideally, we can try and support these protocols as much as we can, because as I said before, I was using OpenAI, right? And I think we all know, based on all of the regulations that are coming down from on both the cryptocurrency side and then also on the AI side, I think there's actually a strong need to make sure that we're supporting these companies that are actually putting out these decentralized solutions, so that we can actually you know use AI to support our communities as best as we can. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is, some of the barriers to AI assisted governance. So, one of the struggles, and this is always the case with AI, is that we need to have AI ready data, right? So much of our time, a lot is in the AI world, is actually spent on aggregating and cleaning data and just getting it ready for us to be able to process it. I don't think there's any reason, at least on the Cardano side, why we can't start trying to come up with better on-chain solutions to make a lot of these pieces of common data that are shared across the shared across communities. I don't think there's any reason why we can't start putting some of this data directly on chain. And that would help, a lot of the people who are AI developers to actually, pull in that data so that we can start using it for a lot of these types of applications. And then, of course, the other barrier is, easily deployable open source AI models. So again, I was using some kind of a centralized service, OpenAI, to generate a lot of this. But it would be nice if we started to develop some of the tooling so that we can easily deploy some of this stuff to some of these Cardano native solutions like NewNet and Iagon. So, all right, cool. That's it. I know that was a little bit long-winded. Hopefully I didn't take up too much time there. So, yeah, does anybody have any questions?
Already, before a question quickly, thanks a lot already on this Elder Millenial. This was really good stuff. And don't worry, no second waste. Yeah, I was impressed how you can put all the complexity that simple together. You did an awesome job there, dude. Really
Thank
awesome.
you. Thank you.
But questions a bunch. So many questions actually. Like what you said already on the topics when you go one slide beforehand. Really, really agree on this. Definitely, I think on the regattas, like we need the AI ready data, right? To think about already when we think about something like Catalyst or our channel, which produces, let's say, proposals in this regard, to make sure we have the proper setup there. And actually, one question. What are you planning for Fund 12?
That's a good question. So, as of right now, the um, we are going to follow the same process as before. However, one of the things that we have done for this round is that we've tried to recruit more people, not just from the Cardano community specifically, but I'm sorry, not just from the Minswap community specifically, but also from kind of the broader Cardano community. So one of the things that at least I have personally found very rewarding about this entire process is a lot of the discussion that goes on, right? So like, I'm a developer. I'm super involved in a lot of the technology. So when I'm reading through some of these things, I get really excited about like the people who are proposing to develop new open source packages or, whatever. But I would say that, I think, one of the people that was in that's been on the selection committee from the beginning is Linda, or also known as CryptoFly. I really actually found a lot of the discussions that like she and I had back and forth, because she comes at things from a very different perspective, right? So like she creates, YouTube videos that, give information about new projects or about the development of the protocol. And she's very focused on education. And one of the things that she was saying is that, hey, listen, like you're only picking the stuff that is like that a developer would like. We also need like to invest in things that are based on education and bringing new people into Cardano and like all of this other stuff. So, I'm hoping at the very least for Fund 12. And I think I saw one of the people, Steve McCurry. I don't know if he is still here, but he's one of the people that was not specifically a part of the Minswap community, but we had put out a public call for people to join, and I'm really kind of looking forward to see what other kinds of perspectives we're gonna be getting for Fund 12 here.
Oh, that's interesting. And also, one thing you mentioned before as well, in Fund 11, somebody requested access to your stuff and used it for their project then as well, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. I think I understood. So yeah, Liquid. I see.
Exactly.
Yeah, Liquid. Yeah, yeah. So Liquid Labs had requested it for Fund 11. I haven't gotten any requests for this round yet, but I mean that's not to say that it won't happen, right? So I'm still in the process of trying to aggregate the data for Fund 12. Once we get that data, I'll probably reach out to a couple of different communities and see if there's any interest in using it.
Would actually love to spam you on this on this already. And say I would love to request access there because it's insanely important actually also for voters, right? Because this round once again we have 1,000 proposals and again one problem to navigate through all the knowledge, right? And I think
Yeah.
you're actually the only ones out there right now provide maybe Cerberus as well, but not sure if they are doing something for Fund 12, but who actually give navigation and analytics on the thing, right? And dude, this would be so awesome to have this actually public, to use it for voters as well, that they can check already, okay, what categories are there?
Yeah, yeah. So I did put up like a really temporary website last time around that allowed you to kind of browse through the different groups. I will probably do that again. It's still
Please,
kind of up in the air.
please do
Yeah,
so.
but
Please
so,
do so.
yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. All right, yeah. I'm not gonna say 100% certain that I will do that, but I will definitely try to do like what I did last time, where once it's all generated, I'll put up a site.
Actually leads to another question then as well to say, because ideally this is something what the community in Catalyst definitely wants to have each funding round and can say, oh, cool, we have this as a community tool and infrastructure. What do you think would be a good way maybe to move into this direction step by step? Because right now, like we don't really have a lot of projects focusing on this topic, right? I think it's maybe a lack of capacity or of interest of not sure.
Yeah, that that is a very good question. I am not certain. So I did so in Fund 11, for the most part, I had actually removed myself from the committee selection process just because I had actually created a proposal to open source this entire thing. And the idea behind it was not just to open source like this entire process of doing all of this proposal clustering and aggregation, but it was also trying to run it fully decentralized, like on Nunet and Eagon, using open source AI models and all of that other stuff. And the thing was is that I had kind of mentioned on this previous slide here, humans still need to be involved. So I don't, and again, I don't know I don't think governance is very sexy, right? I mean, most tokens for DEXs give you some kind of voting power in a DAO. And, trying to get people involved in this stuff, I think is still kind of a challenging task. There's still not much of a premium put on, the significance of being able to vote for these protocols. So that's a good question. I don't know how to, I'm not entirely certain how to fund this. Like it seems like the protocols themselves, like the people that are actually running the protocols, tend to see the value in this. But in terms of kind of like the wider community, I don't know that it's the issue. I don't know the issue that the average person would not see the value in it, but I think the issue is much more so that the average Cardano user is not super interested in governance in general, which is, it's something that I think we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, much agree. And I think a lack of disengagement comes very often by a lack of tools, right? That there aren't that much good tools around where you can actually engage in, let's say, in governance. Catalyst, we have the voting app, and to be honest, it kind of sucks. Then we have Idea Scale, which sucks even more. And then we wonder why people don't engage, right? And I think this is really like a lack of good tools and lack of good UIs and governance UIs then later as well, right? And it's not something what I think insanely powerful when we think about a really good governance UI, that it actually has an AI integration, right? Maybe your co-pilot where you can set some sort of your own parameters. And you have then agents around who can say, oh, okay, these proposals might be interesting for you in several roles. Maybe you reach out to them because you're interested and you want to help, or you are a reviewer. And well, the Catalyst reviewers, they get proposals assigned to them as well, right now in categories, right? So this could be something insanely powerful as well for the voters then later. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yep.
Yeah, may I squeeze in a few questions in there?
please go for it.
All right, thank you. So first of all, thank you so much, Elder Millennial. The name is so original, and I love your background picture. I wish it was bigger. It's so powerful. I wish I could see everything that's going on in that background picture. Um, so thank you for your time, your presentation, and all the work is super impressive. I got about three questions. The most important one is about the way you use AI to actually choose and catalog the project. Does it make any sense? Does it add any value to, Minswap or any project you involved in to do it the other way around as well? What I mean by that is like, would it be possible and would you guys be interested in zooming out? And, I think last time I checked out the fund, it was fund 809, but is there a way to use the same technique to catalog from Fund 1 to Fund 12 or Fund 11, which project actually, changed the world, so to speak, which one worked the best, which one worked a little less, and the one that didn't work. Have AI to, um, you know, reflect on what had happened all these years and what are the success stories. That'll be my first question. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question. So I know, let's see here, I think it was in Fund 10. I think there was a little bit of controversy in terms of like once proposal submissions had closed, there was kind of like a reorganization or recategorization of a bunch of proposals. And I had the intention of going back through and doing kind of a bit of a post-mortem, like just trying to see like, for proposals that were actually moved, what was the likelihood of them actually getting funded? And what you're actually suggesting is kind of doing like an even deeper dive, where it's kind of like, can we use all of this historical data that we have to kind of, let's say, predict the success of them in the long run, right? Yeah. So, yeah, that's very interesting. I think there might be some merit to that. The way that this is, I think maybe if I were to try and do something like that, what I would do is I would actually use that as more of a flagging mechanism. So because it's really difficult to know, and Felix and I were kind of talking about this before, just for a really quickly before everyone had joined. It's really difficult to know the impact of the things that you're doing now on whatever is going to happen in the future, right? I mean, I've worked on a bunch of various projects, and like even when I was working on this AI generation or this AI assisted catalyst selection stuff, um, it was difficult for me to know if it would work, or like if it would even be successful or something that we would want to use moving forward, right? So I think that's kind of hard to predict just in general. But I think what might be valuable is actually kind of like the negative of that, which is kind of like, can we actually flag proposals that actually have like that are very likely to fail or not have much of an impact? And I think that would actually be much better in terms of like trying to flag suspicious behavior, which I think has traditionally been a big problem. And I think, because I did specifically focus on Fund 10 here, I don't know if anybody remembers, but there was like one person or a group of people that had submitted like 20 to 25% of the proposals in Fund 10. And like it was almost certainly somebody that was, trying to like scam, funds out of the Catalyst system. And I think, uh, Danny had, yeah, Danny had kind of mentioned in Fund 11 that they had actually, they had implemented some things that tried to help reduce that. And if I remember correctly, there was only 700 or 800 proposals in Fund 11. So I think that was kind of a good indicator that whatever protections they had put in place were probably good. But that's not to say that you couldn't do more additional work using AI, right? And to that end, especially now, if you're starting off with Fund One and you go back and look through everything and say, okay, which projects actually delivered, and are there things that we can actually pick up on that might be good indicators of whether or not a project is going to be capable of delivering? I think that might be a useful tool. And I would really much like to stress, and again, you know, kind of going back to this classical humanist, label that I put on myself. I would very much so emphasize flagging and not decision making by the AI. Just because it's entirely possible that the AI is going to try and flag something that is either good or bad, right? But it really requires like a human to actually go through and make those kind of critical decisions. So I hope that's a good answer to your question.
Yeah, thank you so much. My next two questions are very softball, very easy questions, but thank you for this, deep answer. So the next one is, are you familiar with Claude Anthropic AI? And do you like it? And all the work that you did with ChatGPT, could you have done it or could you do it in the future with Claude? That's the second one. And the last one, okay, I'll wait. I'll wait for this answer first. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So Claude, so I have actually not used Claude very much. So there's a variety of reasons why I used OpenAI for this. A lot of it had to do with me like having tooling for it. For the most part, what I really try to do is I really try to focus on deploying my own open source models, just for like data privacy and security reasons. Um, the people that I work with have used Claude quite a bit, and they only have good things to say about it. But
All right.
yes, actually,
Mhm.
I'm sorry to finish that. Yes, I very likely could have done the exact same thing with Claude, that I did here. So,
Thank you so much. So the last one, like I said, it's been a while since, I looked into Cardano and all the different projects. But on your first slide, you mentioned that you're also a Cardano Python developer. And um, is Rust the language that Cardano use still, or there is evolution there? Can we use Python on Cardano now, or I'm just
Oh
old?
man. Let
Okay.
me tell you, Cardano development, like the tools for Cardano development have really matured. I think originally everything I don't want to say you were locked into using Haskell, but that's where a lot of the original development was. Since then, man, there's if you take a look at like Blink Labs, they've done a lot of development in Go. Cardano, for Python, there's PyCardano. Uh, Python also actually has its own contract library as well, so you can actually write Cardano contracts in Python. Um, yeah, you can still do things in Rust, man. Like there's a lot of language support out there for Cardano now. So both interacting with the chain and also doing smart contract development.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Nice. That's been some good questions. So, somebody else, any last questions? Because we closely coming to the end of the session as well. So, if you have anything on your mind yet, go for it.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Uh, Two questions actually. One, for somebody who's trying to learn AI and get started, what would you recommend? And two, what inspired you to go down this path and use your capabilities in crypto?
Yeah, good question. So getting started in AI, I would like there are a lot of courses out there on AI. I I mean everybody has their own kind of like their personal preferences in terms of which libraries they want to use. So, the two major ones are PyTorch and TensorFlow. A lot of the work that I tend to do for my day job is very experimental. Like I pull apart AI and I mess around with a lot of the internals of it. So as a result, PyTorch tends to be quite a bit easier to do that kind of stuff with. So if you're looking for something that's going to be much more production ready, I think TensorFlow is maybe a bit of a better bet, just because they have some really good tooling around that. But yeah, in both PyTorch and TensorFlow has a very large body of like courses that you can take for that kind of stuff. So what inspired me to go down this path? So that's an excellent question. So I originally got involved in crypto in like 2015 with Ethereum. I ended up having to sell it for like sell everything that I had in crypto for like life reasons. And I just decided at the beginning of last year that I wanted to jump back into things. So I was taking a look at a variety of blockchains and um, I settled on Cardano largely because of, again, some of the infrastructure projects that were going on. And, I could really see a lot of the possibilities in terms of creating like truly decentralized AI. So, that's something I'm really interested in developing. So that's kind of why, I'm kind of going down the path that I am now.
It's awesome. Thanks for that. Appreciate you, Elder.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes. You're definitely an elder. You fits well to you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. And with this, we are also at the end of the hour and closing down the session. Elder Millenial, dude, thanks a lot, really, for taking the time, for taking especially initiative and everything what you have done so far. I think the impact on this might actually be quite insane, I think, because there's a lot of, especially on Cardano's side now, as we are full in Voltaire and everything focus over to governance. I think what you are doing here is actually a really good bootstrapping and piloting of some really important stuff that may play a really, really important role, actually. And thanks.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see like I have not actually been following like the SIP 1694 stuff. I need to do a deep dive into that and see, you know, maybe how AI could get involved in a lot of the Cardano governance type stuff.
Ooh. If you want to find some easy deep dive on Cardano governance, definitely check out stuff from Mike Horman. He's the SPO of Able pool as well. Do you know the dude?
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely check
He's
that out.
wait, I sent you this Twitter right in the live chat. Tuk, tuk. There you go. He has
Oh, perfect.
really good stuff, and he's deep in the development there. And was the guy he for a short time he was owner of governance test test our glorified dictator. No, no kidding, but a really good dude. Yeah, definitely. And then that's it. Everybody, thanks a lot for taking your time. Thanks a lot for being here, for everything what you do to make the space what it is and to what it may become if we do the stuff right, what we want to do. Have a beautiful weekend. Take some time, screen off. We have far too much time in front of the screens, all of us. I'm quite sure. Don't forget.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, man.
All right,
Indeed.
yeah, thanks for having me, Felix.
Thank you, thank you, guys. Have a great one.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.